Good evening and welcome to Practical Talk Time. I'm Sandy Wrobel, your host for this evening, and tonight's topic is dealing with loss. And we have Cindy Miller from Newtown, Connecticut with us tonight that will be talking about loss, and it can be loss of any kind. Whatever comes to your mind about something that you have lost, Cindy will be talking about, and we'd like you to call in if you wish with your experiences around loss, and or you might have some questions for Cindy. So now I'd like to introduce Cindy to you. Welcome to our show, Cindy.
Hi, Sandy.
It's great to have you back. I know we've had you on for Practical Talk Time,
Yes.
and also for these days. So
Yes.
You're a frequent guest of ours.
Yes.
And would you like to talk to our audience about the topic tonight on loss?
Sure. In life, there's so many ways that we experience loss. We can experience loss of a loved one. We can experience loss of a friend. We can experience loss of a job. We can experience loss of a pet. There's just many different ways that people experience losses, and a lot of times people have a lot of challenge in coping with loss, or how to manage loss, or how to move past a loss in their life.
Now, have you had special training in dealing with loss, or is this something you're developing on your own? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. My background is I am an intuitive coach, and no, I haven't had special training. My training has really been through life experiences, and I'm very God-based and very Christ-based, and I've been given the gift, as I feel we've all been given gifts, of being able to hear a message about
Yes.
something, about a loss, or about a person, or about a situation, and that's really what I use as my tools, God.
And what kind of experiences have some people had regarding loss? Has it all been very practical, what we normally think of reactions, or have some of it been more religious or spiritual?
Well, for some of the people that I've worked with, I had a young girl a few years ago, right before Christmas, whose fiance was killed over in Iran, that she planned on marrying. So it was pretty traumatic of a loss for her. I've had people just not have made peace with a parent, and the parent passes and they're very upset because they didn't get to say goodbye. I've had couples where I have a friend where her spouse died, a childhood sweetheart. And in fact, when I attended the memorial service, I was told to wear a certain color. And when I wore the color, she's like, "Why did you choose that color?" And I said, "Because your husband told me to wear that." And she goes, "That was his favorite color." And so I didn't wear the typical black mourning color in attending that service.
That's interesting, because even tonight I said I had planned on wearing something different and it didn't work out, and then I looked at you and I said, oh, well, it's really better that I didn't choose that color.
Yeah, well, actually, color can be very healing as well, as far as, loss and stuff. You're wearing like a purple color, which is very much a spiritual color, and blue that I'm wearing is usually a color that typically represents healing.
I've heard, I don't know if there was really research done on it, but years ago I did hear that, many people would have experiences of going into a church and being healed, and what they were saying is, with the stained glass, with the sunshine coming through, certain rays, the radiation or whatever, would be the right vibration hitting their body and would cause them to experience a heal.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I know that there have been books written on color and healing, but I haven't really delved into it greatly.
Yeah, color very much affects our mood, and we have sacred space, which I call our home, where we spend a lot of time, and it's really important that color just affects you. There was a workshop I just attended, and one of the gals that was there, who was very depressed and feeling a lot of loss in her life, it came through that I heard a message, when I say came through from God, that you need to go home and paint your house, paint some color in your rooms. I said, "What colors do you have?" And she says, "Everything is white." And I said, "Well, you need to put some color just to change the energy in that space, to have the space feel softer." So she was really excited about that, and she plans on painting her space, and we'll see what happens.
Right, many times realtors will say, oh, keep your house white, and I had a house built, same thing, everything off white, and I was much happier and my other house where it had color.
Yeah.
And I look back and I'm thinking, why did I even go with that? Because it's my house. I should choose what I want.
Exactly.
And it's not for sale,
Exactly.
And it's just interesting.
Yeah.
And we don't give it enough thought sometimes.
No, our surroundings, our sacred space, it's really important for us to take in that space things that bring joy to us, things that relax us, things that calm us. And they even say that color, not this is a show on color tonight, but they even paint certain restaurants a certain color to have you eat more. Like it's shown, like certain colors bring out your appetite more, and certain colors, so it's just, there's a lot to color.
Right, they say the golden arches, the colored green, there are certain colors.
Yeah.
And I think they said that blue really depresses the appetite.
Yeah.
And when you think of it, we don't see too many kitchens done in blue.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
So maybe that would be another thing to look into one of these days.
A show on color.
Yes. And we hope that people will be calling in.
Please
at
call.
203-792-4101 and share some of your experiences. And the loss can be many different kinds of loss. It could be a passing of someone. It might be a relationship. It might be a loss of a job. We know we've had a lot of that going on currently in our country and around the world. And it might even be loss of a pet. And sometimes it might be something very very mundane and like losing your favorite pen that you like to work with.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's something, it's not that dramatic, but somehow it affects us emotionally.
Right, or it could also be the loss of confidence or loss of self-esteem. It could be something that you just feel like, I've lost, this is missing from my life right now. I used to be like this, and just feeling that element of yourself has disappeared.
Mm-hmm. And how do you deal with people that perhaps have had a loss of a job? Because I know a lot of people, I hear they've had a loss of a job and they're trying desperately to do everything. They're taking extra training. And then we have companies that if you're currently unemployed, they don't want to employ you.
Right. Well, I think like when you're dealing with a loss of a job, it's a great time to step out and reinvent yourself. It's also a time to really find out what it is you're passionate about and what you truly like. And let me give you an example of this. My brother, who I adore, happens to be working in an attorney firm, and he just does not like the work, Mm-hmm. And being employed in this firm, he was just let go the other day, and he's like, oh. And I said, Steve, this is a blessing. You're not even doing what you're passionate about. You're not even doing what you enjoy. You're not even doing what you're good at. And he's an amazing, amazing artist. So to make a long story short, I went to a party, a Super Bowl party. You're at the Super Bowl party.
Yes.
And on the site was an advertisement for Career Builder. And I go, what's Career Builder? And someone said, oh, that's a place you look for jobs. So I said, And for some reason, my intuition said, go on that site for a minute and look for a job, because my brother had sent me this note that he had just lost his job. Well, what appears on that site but this job in Chelsea, all pertaining to art, and an amazing job offer. And my brother would be great at this. So being the sister, I sent him off an email and said, Steve, you should take a look at this job. Well, lo and behold, as he was going to a headhunter, he walked right by this same company that was hiring. And he popped in and he said, I want you to meet the face behind the resume. And he said, I have an interest in this job. And they said, great. Well, 5 people later, it looks like he might be getting this job. So I asked him, have you heard back yet? He goes, no, I'm waiting to hear. He goes, but if I got this job, it would be just too good to be true. It's my dream job. It's something that I've always wanted to do. So there's where I say loss steps in, loss forces us to reevaluate, take another look. We have these little angelic helpers in our life, which could be like a sister or somebody else, who encourages you and is supportive of the dream that you hold. And we'll wait and see what happens if he does get this job. But the point is that he's being shifted to move. And it's a good thing.
The loss is becoming a gain.
A gain.
Like the good luck, bad luck stories.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
That is fascinating. I think what else is fascinating is that in the arts, when you're thinking of a job and the economy not being up to par, we would think it would be difficult to get a job in the arts, and here is one. And of course, I have an interest in astrology.
Right.
And just about a week or so ago, I think it was February 3rd, I'd have to look up the exact date. Neptune went into the Pisces, which is the natural rulership of Pisces. And it will be there for the next roughly 14 years. And it rules the arts, particularly music.
Okay.
And I know in a lot of the schools, one of the things they're cutting back on is music, which, you know, doesn't quite fit in. But then I'm also seeing ads where people are opening up their own music schools.
Okay.
And now you're giving an example of your brother who is out of work and he has a job offer in the arts, and that would be usually where you'd think that would be the last place you'd be able to get a job.
Correct, and it was right in his neighborhood, Chelsea, in New York, where he lives. So, like, how ironic that it's right in Chelsea, he lives in Chelsea, and the job offer for the arts is in Chelsea. And I really hope that music is brought back, because music to me is just messages from God come through in music. Music is just divinely inspired to me. You know, Bach, Mozart, there's so many unbelievable composers and people who write lyrics out there. So music really is another important way of healing with loss, listening to a song. Just a song that is just so inspiring to you can heal you, help heal you.
Dealing with that recently, we also had Whitney Houston.
Yes.
And you want to speak a little bit about that?
Well, I happened to see when I was on Yahoo this flash that Whitney Houston had passed, and it just so gripped my heart thinking about, here is a young woman who really had it all, or so it seemed.
Yes.
I mean, amazing talent, amazing voice, amazing beauty. She rose to the top, yet there seemed to be a lot of things troubling her. And when I saw that loss, I felt compelled to write a poem for Whitney. And I have brought that poem with me tonight.
Oh, that's wonderful. You can share that with us. And then I'd also, you know, my background, not background, but interest in astrology, I can add a little bit to that because it is a sad and fascinating story at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think everybody felt that. And let's hear your poem, and then
Sure.
we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, and I'll just read it very quickly. And I do have this up on YouTube, too, if anybody would like to, you know, hear it again. But here we go. Was it the addiction? What caused her all the friction? She was loved for her magical voice. What was her ultimate choice? The fans clapped their hands. For a woman no one could understand. Her charm and beauty weathered on. God loved her through and through, no matter the song. It is in her passing that we all learn success, beauty, and fame don't earn. What it is, we must learn. The feeling of having it all, as fast as it comes, is as fast as it falls. So let's move on to healing and grace, forgiveness of self for all we face. Let judgment not be tossed around, but in love is where we can be found.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
And I found it very interesting that when they had the Grammy Awards, they had started out with the prayer, and the higher rulership of Pisces is Jupiter, which, just a very quick aside, Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the zodiac. It stays in each sign roughly 12 years, which means that every 12 years, like 12, 24, 36, multiples of 12, you have what's called a Jupiter return. Whitney was 48, and that means it was her fourth Jupiter return. And it was interesting because it really brought out, you know, how she was a gospel singer.
Right.
They had the prayer at the opening.
Right.
And Neptune, on the other hand, it does rule Pisces, but it also has the downside. Like Jupiter sometimes brings too much. Maybe she had too much too fast.
Right.
But Neptune rules also water and drugs. And when you look at it, drugs could be something that's healing.
Right.
that's necessary in medicine, but
Right.
it can also be the addiction.
Right, and we don't know what caused her passing, and we do know that there was some things with drugs, but I think what's important is the gripping effects that drugs can have on your life if used not properly, that they can just so overcome you that it can destroy a life. Yeah.
I almost wonder if we're going to see a lot more of lyrics to music that will be, more spiritual or religious in nature.
I hope so. In fact, I've written some spiritual lyrics, and I need music, anybody out there, to go with. But I really hope we're stepping into more spiritual music out there, because I think we definitely do need it.
Very interesting, because we have gotten away from a lot of it. And the song that they keep playing, the night that she passed, I had the radio on, and all of a sudden they announced it, and they were playing all her music. And of course, the one that they keep playing constantly is "I Will Always Love You."
Yeah, and that's such an amazing song. And one thing I want to tell you, what I do with talking about loss and healing and music, very often when I'm driving in the car or wherever it is and I'm listening to music, I take those lyrics and reverse them as if God is singing them to me or I am singing them to God. So the song about the love for Whitney, you can almost play that back and say, well, that's God singing to me. And that helps us in our healing journey when we feel lost or alone, or we feel no one cares, no one loves me, I have no one in my life. You have God. And I think we forget that.
That's very, very important. And for those people who are watching and for ourselves, it'll be interesting just to see where are we going. Start listening to the new lyrics coming out, and, I can't say exactly what will come out. I'm just kind of guessing based on the planetary aspects, but it just seems even in the Super Bowl we saw some of that.
Yeah. With Madonna.
Yes.
With Madonna, where all the people lit candles up in the stadium, and it was just it had a very prayerful energy, even the dress. It
Yes.
just seemed like it was more of a spiritual performance versus a typical, not that it was not entertaining, but that side of spirituality was coming through.
Yes, yes. And normally I'm not into sports, but I was into a party, and you invited me.
Yeah, great
Henry's,
party.
yes.
Great Super Bowl, by the way.
Yeah, and even there, some of the men, they had the white pants, and I noticed down the side seams, they had the musical staff. So, I'm always like, you're looking at the lyrics and the song.
Yeah.
When things are happening in the mundane world, or just what I see around me, I kind of relate it to, what aspects are going on now.
Right.
So there's really this influence coming in.
Right, right.
So I wish we would have some people calling in.
Exactly.
With some more stories that they have about loss.
Trust in the plan, trust in the plan.
Have you written other poems, or do you have any plans for your poems?
I don't know what I'm going to do with these poems yet, but good question. Yes, I've written a ton of poems have been coming to me lately, like Vump, and I go, they're not my poems. I say, God gives me these poems. And I wrote, and I've just posted some poems on my website, which is sacredgrounds.be like boy, Z like zebra, but they're all dealing with loss. And I had a friend whose brother committed suicide. I had a friend whose father has passed. I had another friend whose father's passed. And I had another friend whose mother's passed. And with all of this passing, I just said, what could I do special to acknowledge their loss? And these poems were given to me. And then as I got into that groove, I'm like, well, what other poems could I write about? And I've got just a ton of poetry on so many different things, on relationships, on Santa Claus, on life, on just September 11th. I mean, a whole array of poems have been coming to me, and they're very, very powerful poems. So if anybody would like to check those out, and I just love writing them, and the feedback has been great. It's like, oh, that so touched me, that was so beautiful, thank you for writing that, that's just how I felt, that kind of thing.
And we are going to have on, I believe coming back in May, it'll be, sometime later on in the spring, late May, Amy Naraki, who's an English professor for University of Bridgeport.
Great.
And I believe you've met
Yes,
her. Yes.
yes.
We're going to have her coming back on.
Great.
So maybe a future show would be even maybe sharing your poems together with her. We
That
could
would
do
be
a poetry
awesome,
show.
because poetry is also another way of healing. Anybody out there who's suffering a loss or is feeling upset or sad, is write a poem. Write a poem and, express what it is you're sensing and feeling. It just does amazing, has an amazing effect on you, just the writing. Writing is very journaling, journaling about your loss, rather than stuffing your feelings and holding them, is to release them and let them go. And we do our best writing when we're sad. I mean, I was sad by a lot of different things that were occurring for my friends and feeling for them of what they were going through. So my best work comes out when I'm a little sad there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I'm not into writing. Usually anger brings out. If I feel like writing,
Okay.
if I'm angry, that's
Okay.
when I'm more prone to write.
Well, so that's good. So if you're experiencing loss and you're angry, then write. It's just write. It's very therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting that recently on the news, too, they've been talking about placebos and people who are on drugs for depression, and they're claiming that when people didn't know whether they were on the placebo or the real drug, the effects were the same. So if someone came to you for, counseling and they had some type of loss, what would your feelings be? Supposing I come to you and say, I've experienced a loss and I have these drugs that the doctor gives to me. What would be your reaction?
I would pray and ask God what His reaction is to the medication that they are taking. If it's something that they should continue on, is there an alternative, or is there a healing that can take place from what's going on with that person? So I've had very often in sessions that I've done with people, I've had you need to take this vitamin, you need to go see such and so, you need to change this in your eating habits, you need to be drinking water, different things that would affect you on a physical level, which will also affect you on an emotional level. Because that all ties in.
So you have had those experiences?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll say, are you eating a ton of sugar? And I'll hear, or are you? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, well, you got to cut that back. It's, it's affecting you. And they'll go, oh, I was thinking about doing that, or something like that.
Right, there's a lot of things we know, but
Yeah.
following through on them isn't always so easy.
Yeah, and I think we also tend to just reach for the medicine cabinet, thinking we're going to get an instant fix, and I'm going to just take this pill and take it and all my problems are going to go away. And we really have to go within and figure out, why am I feeling what I'm feeling? Let me control my thoughts on this a little bit better, and look for alternative ways of healing. It is not always through the prescription that's written that is going to be the answer to, having us feel more joy or just feeling better about life.
I think it's in our psyche, the way we're just so used to medicines, and a lot of people question these other ideas, and yet when you think of it, if you would kind of look at it, remove yourself from it, I mean, it seems kind of crazy too that you take this little pill or
Yeah.
whatever and that's going to cure you.
Yeah.
I mean, they do have effects
Yes, absolutely.
for good or bad, and there are times when it is necessary.
Yeah.
But I guess coming into issue, maybe it will be people will start to look more closely as how much is there a bit too much of it?
Right, or what's an alternative I could use as a healing modality, rather than putting so much faith in this little pill. Well, how about putting some faith, spiritual faith, into your healing and whatnot, and
Right, and we're not saying don't go to a doctor
No, we're
by
not
any means.
saying that by any
No.
means, but look at a lot of different alternative things. There's different hands-on healing through energy, there's supplements through vitamins, there's organic foods, there's exercise, there's drinking a lot of water, just basic things that we need to learn about feeding ourselves.
And I'd like to point out too, when people are have surgical problems or whatever, there may be alternatives in the hospital that they may or may not tell you about. When I had my knees replaced, I had to go to the Burke Institute in White Plains for almost 2 weeks
Right.
for therapy, and it's really necessary. It takes a long time to really get back on your feet and so forth.
Right.
And they did have alternative therapy there.
They're great.
And it was just, I was talking to someone with the occupational therapy, she told me about it. And several instances there, and one of them, a practitioner came up. One of the things she did was she had a tuning fork, and she would hit the bottom of my feet with it, hit the tuning fork, put it in the bottom of my feet, and I could feel the energy going up my knees.
Like the vibration
Yes.
of energy. Yeah.
Yes, and
Oh,
in the morning they would have, there would be a medical doctor that would come in each morning and ask how you're doing, and I would, they would have the medical reports, and I mentioned, how she had come in and so forth, and the medical doctor said, she said, oh, I have to give that more thought. She said, I usually forget all about it.
Well, that's so funny that you should bring that up, because it's funny where we start off a show and where the subject line goes and stuff like that. But I have a very good friend who is very rarely sick, and he attributes that to the fact that he hums, and he hummed from a very young child to an older person now, and he feels that the humming, it's like that vibration, that and the chanting that people do, and the om, and even in churches, the chanting, they always
Yes.
say that the effect of that humming, that vibration of energy that goes through you helps heal you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because there have been books, I don't know, back from the 70s, and it was about different keys, like the key of F or whatever,
Yeah.
and there were books that were written about the certain vibrations and what parts of the body they could heal.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think there's even a book called Hum Your Way to Health. I remember somebody telling me that back a while ago. So there's so much that we don't understand, and that's why I think it's so important for us to be open to conversations like the ones that we're having and saying, maybe there is something to this. So maybe if I'm experiencing a lot of loss and I'm feeling down in the dumps and I'm very depressed, maybe I should flip on my stereo and start listening to some music. Maybe I should start humming, maybe do some kind of chanting to get my energy flowing, to get me moving, to get even that little tuning fork, whatever it is, to start vibrating differently.
I think part of the problem, though, when we have loss and we're not feeling the way that we should, we're usually not apt to do things like that. Okay, let's take the phone call. Hello, welcome to These Days. I don't know what's wrong with her. Oh, hello.
Oh, listen, I was enjoying your show very much, enjoying Cindy Miller and you also, Sandra. And I just wanted to ask Cindy a question, make a comment as well. Many years ago, I lost a loved one through a street crime, and, it was a very traumatic situation. It took me quite a few years to get over it, but now I feel that God has, over the years, healed me because I'm at peace. But I do wonder about the people that committed the crime. They went to prison and now they're all out, and someone else's life is gone. And I find that very difficult at times to accept. And I was just wondering, what do you think, Cindy, these people who have committed this crime might be feeling now? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Okay, well, the first thing I still sense is that there still is a little bitterness from you about the loss. Was this person taken rather young?
41.
Yeah, okay, so rather, and was it a man or a woman?
Was a man.
Yeah.
I was wondering if
It's almost like
Yeah, go ahead.
it's almost like you still feel like this missing piece of your life with this loss.
Yes, because it was kind of an unfulfilled thing, and I just felt like I didn't know, where my life and his life and the whole thing would end up. You're just living your life, and all of a sudden something is altered dramatically.
Right.
But I do feel peace from God. I really believe that God took me through it, and I feel that way, but I often wonder about these 3 people that were involved.
Okay.
And where are they in their lives? Maybe that's not my place to think about that.
One of the things I get is that this loss led you to many other things from experiencing this loss.
Correct.
Okay, so very often when we have a traumatic loss, it's a catalyst for us to push us forward into doing something different that we normally never would have looked at, felt, or experienced. It's, I hear God saying, it's very easy for us to pray for people we love, and it's very difficult for us to pray for people that we're angry with. And that's part of the things that we need to learn as spiritual beings here, that, everyone is loved, and to pray for that healing of that loss. It doesn't really matter what they're experiencing now. You need to keep the energy on yourself as far as what you're experiencing, and hope to forgive them for the loss. And when you feel like you can't, ask God, like, God, I'm stuck. I want to forgive these 3 people in my heart for this loss, and I'm stuck. Help me to, release this, heal from this, because the bitterness you hold in your heart is like a bitter seed. And when you're planting a bitter seed in your heart, nothing grows. And I don't mean that like to scare you or anything. It's for our own good to heal from anything like that we're bitter about it, we're angry about it, because it affects us on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level.
Right. I don't think I'm bitter so much as curious as to why it would, how, maybe I'm focusing, as you say, not on myself.
Exactly. They're going, I'm hearing, why are you so curious?
Because they're free.
Right. Well, you need to meditate on that.
Yeah.
Okay? Because there's still a harboring of resentment there. And so if you weren't harboring any resentment and you weren't, you just let them go. You'd let them go. Let God work with them. Let God handle them. And just focus on your own healing. And I really feel for you that you have a powerful healing ministry ahead of you. I
hope so.
You understand that deep root of pain, because you've experienced it personally on a very deep soul core level.
Yeah.
So be patient and kind and gentle with yourself, but know that from this, a lot of good things are going to happen. So if you focus and harness your energy on the good that you can create through this loss, and the other hearts that you can work with for people in helping them through their healing process from the trauma that they experience, that's the gift that you can take out of this whole experience.
Yes, well, I want to thank you, and I needed to hear that again, and also to focus on myself more, and thank God for all the blessings, which I do all the time. And thank you, Cindy, for your kind comment.
And thank you for calling in, and keep up that wonderful healing work that you do, because it's only going to grow and get bigger.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sandra.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and we'd like to have other people call in with their experiences.
Absolutely. And one of the things interesting from that caller is very often a really traumatic loss leads to something amazing happening. It's like, wow. I spent time with my friend this weekend whose child was murdered. And from that experience...
A friend?
A friend. And from that experience, her life changed so dramatically, but she really found herself, and she found God, and she found a greater calling on her life. And from that, she wound up developing a new site for people who've lost children, and it's turned into this amazing, big, huge thing. And she said, you know what, I never thought I could speak in front of a group. I never thought I could help somebody who was grieving. I never thought I was going to heal from this. And not that she doesn't hold this spot in her heart where it still can hurt, or she can't cry now and then, but she has accomplished so much stuff through this loss, that so much has evolved into helping so many other people. So like the caller who called, that catalyst can, we plant these seeds out there to, like a field of seeds that spread out and launches something amazing.
And I think that's so much more difficult when someone is murdered. There's a loss, but even though it's a loss, when a child or a loved one is sick, it's like, you know it's coming, it's still kind of shocking,
Right.
but you're kind of prepared for it.
Yeah.
And when someone's murdered, it's a very sudden and instantaneous event.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, I always think maybe it'd be more difficult. I really don't know.
Right. Right. I think, I have a book that I'm working on, and I have a lot of questions and answers to God about things such as this, and praying and asking God these deep questions about stuff like that, and God giving an answer. And one of the answers, God did give me, though, about people is not to form attachments to anyone in our life, like permanent attachments, because one day there's going to be a change in the lineup. So when we get so attached, and it's like our life cannot go on unless you're in it, and the minute you're taken, my life ceases to exist. God does not want us to have that kind of feeling. Yes, to grieve, and yes, to honor the loss and on all of that. But God wants us to appreciate the gift of the day no matter what. There is something to be grateful for. There is something still there for you. And a lot of times I find with loss, and some of the clients I've worked with, one in particular, they've never been alone or by themselves. They are like, I've so leaned on my husband, and I don't know what to do, and yada, yada, yada. And I married him I met him when I was 16. I married him at 21, and sometimes there's a time where you learn to grow and expand from that loss, like, oh, I can manage things. Yes, you would like that person there, but oh, I can do this for myself. I can be a little independent here. So we learn to grow up and expand very much through heartfelt lessons of loss. Our greatest growth comes from when our heart's being expanded and stretched and tested and felt.
I don't have it, a long time ago. I forget exactly how it went, but it was something, it was like a little poem you put on the refrigerator. And it was something to the effect that someone to love, God lends us someone to love.
Ah, that's beautiful.
Which is the same idea. It's not permanent. But I think we're always looking for something that we seek that permanency usually.
We seek that permanency fix to, like, that's my fix, and I'm going to have that fix, and I'm going to be happy by having that fix with that person. And not that we don't have great people in our life, and not that it's not hard, but the point is, as you just said, then God will lend you someone else next. And then you just have that other special person, and I'm not saying someone can replace a person, but there'll be new experiences and adventures for you to step into if you open your heart up to them.
And maybe that's supposed to be the purpose in life.
Yeah. I love that, though, what you just said, that God lends people, and maybe the purpose in life is to just, I really feel one of our main purposes in life is to have expansion of our heart at all times, to just have the ability to love through everything. Jesus loved us. I mean, God gave us Jesus, and Jesus loved us and sacrificed Jesus, if you go with what the Bible's teaching was, which was a huge loss, but then he resurrected and ascended to show us that the loss did not stay. So if we do have the spiritual faith believing that this is just a temporary stay here anyway, and we're going to be reunited one day, it's just a temporary going goodbye, and I'll see you again.
I have a book that I brought in tonight.
Great.
That I have not read. I just recently purchased it.
Okay.
And it ties in a little bit with what you were saying. I brought
Great.
it thinking maybe we'll just see where it goes.
Great.
I find it a bit controversial. It's called Judas and Jesus, Two Faces of a Single Revelation by Jean-Yves Leloup.
Okay.
And I'll just read what the back of it is. I haven't
Sure.
even started to read it. It says, the familiar story of Judas, betrayer of Jesus, is striking because of its incomprehensibility. Why would one of Christ's disciples and companions of the heart deliver him up to his enemies and a barbarous, ignominious, and certain death for 30 pieces of silver? Jean-Yves Leloup's careful investigation of the Gospels, various apocryphal texts, and most importantly, the Coptic code codex known as the Gospel of Judas, which I've never heard of, but it's referred to here, leads him to conclude that there is more to the familiar story of Judas than a simple demonstration viewed through one man of humanity's inherent failings. In this reconstruction, based on these classic texts, Leloup offers an alternative explanation for Judas's actions, complete with illustrative dialogue. The betrayal of Jesus to the Romans was Jesus' idea, explains Leloup. Now that sounds a little strange right there. Jesus persuaded Judas to play the role of evil in humankind by telling him that the enactment was crucial to God's plan and would set Judas by Jesus' side in eternity. There where I am, spoke Jesus to Judas, is where I wish you too to be. But to get there, Judas, a metaphorical representation of the darker side present in all human beings and the shadow counterpart of his Messiah dying on the cross, must first shed all his human qualities. His failings of greed, deceit, and cowardice, and even his faith and hope are washed away in the despair that engulfs him. A parallel moment occurs for Jesus on the cross, when he comes to know the despair of separation from God. The moment Judas loses his life and all that gave it meaning, his God, his law, his justice, his Messiah, is the very moment he finds that which he cannot disregard, or life eternal. Thus, in the moment of his ultimate extremity, Judas receives Jesus' true message and his intended gift.
Yes.
So this idea of separation from God, which seems to tie in, but when I read this, I thought, this just seems like talking about the lost. Why are these other people still alive? And what is their life like? And why are they free?
Right.
What is their experience? I thought the call we had tied into this, and it's someone that doesn't even know what this book is about or hasn't
Right.
seen it.
Right. So what is your impression of what you just read? What are you taking from that?
That the experience of separation from God was the same for both. But, when you look at it, these things were prophesized, and why would Judas be a human on earth, put here for that reason? The darker side of humankind.
But typically with prophecy, and God gives us prophecy, God already knows what's in store for us tomorrow. God already knew it was in store for us yesterday, and God knows where we are at this moment. So very often, God will put, characters in the Candyland game on our path because he knows exactly what they're going to do to fulfill his ultimate plan and purpose of our lives. So it's like you just walk out, like he's like, I'm not surprised by that because I knew he was going to do that. And that's just like a prophetic message, like you're stepping into the revelation of what's being known. So there's no surprises on God.
But yet we like to also feel that we have some free will.
We definitely have free will. There is no doubt in my mind that we are given the gift of choice. Nothing is forced upon us. It is, like a relationship spiritually is to be a willing, wanting, seeking relationship. No one wants to be in a forced relationship. If I said to anybody in my life, I force you to be my friend, you have to do this with me all the time, you'd be like, well, wait a minute, Zinnia, let me get to know you first. Let me see if I like you. And, we can't force relationship with anyone, and we cannot force relationships spiritually either. And that is the gift of free will. Mm-hmm. Really important.
And the other thing that crosses my mind when I read something like that was a big case in Connecticut, the Pettit case. There was a family, all intact, wonderful family, and they're invaded, and horrible death, horrible, the circumstances around it.
Right.
And I can see the darker side of myself. I know
Right.
the big issue is the death penalty, some for, some against.
Right.
And they're trying to reintroduce legislation that would
Right.
not have the death penalty. The darker side of me would say, I think they should be put to death the way they did to their those girls.
Right.
Put them on a bed and set them on fire. But then I'm thinking, well, would I really be able to do that?
Right.
Probably not, but I have to be honest and say that thought certainly comes to my mind.
Right.
The idea of I will get revenge.
Right. Well, one of the things which brings me back, and I've always loved this quote, and there's certain quotes that stick with me, and it's an eye for an eye and the world goes blind. And that was said by Gandhi. And I really feel that we are not here to seek revenge. We can give those situations, those circumstances in people for God to deal with. And I do believe there is a dark side and can be evil, but evil and fear is the opposite of love. And so when there's this attack, there's a lot of wounding that's going on right there, and a lot of healing as far as why that happens. But it's the polarity of good versus evil. But I always feel that good wins out ultimately. It'll always win out.
And ironically, Komar Sarjevsky came from a family that was ultra-religious, and he was involved in theater and whatever. I have an article here.
Right.
Man charged in home invasions, details abuse. It would be no excuse for what he
Right.
did, but it just seems so incomprehensible, similar to the Jesus and Judas story.
Right.
Where he was a disciple, a follower, and
Right.
sells them out for 30 pieces of silver.
Right.
And then we look at our world situation.
Right.
And the economy. And,
Right.
and the whole macrocosm, we see something similar.
I think the important thing to focus on it, there are consequences for our actions. So to really choose wisely, because we don't get away with anything in the end. Big picture.
Which I think will be a lesson to be learned. That's why I really do believe we will see, this is my guess, but we will see more of the spiritual, religious verses coming in and music. It doesn't mean that it all has to be like that, but I think it may be coming back because a lot of the rap music was really so much more on the dark side.
Right, right.
And I haven't heard so much of it lately on the radio.
And I think with any of that, it's when you're even that music, it's like when we speak life to something. The power of the spoken words. You're putting that energy and you're speaking life to that. So I think it's really important, like with the music, like what are the lyrics saying to the songs that you're listening to? Are they uplifting? Are they positive? Are they loving? Or are they dark? Are they negative? It's like, because that you're taking into your spirit. Man's spirit, woman's spirit. You're feeding that to yourself.
The idea of thoughts become reality.
Yeah, very important.
It's, we have probably around 10 more minutes to go on the show, so anyone else would like to call in, please do so. 203-792-4101. And I think that you have a book that you're working on. I don't know if
Yes.
it's related to this or not.
Yeah, it's related to loss. It's related to doing your inner work, because I believe the gift to everything is within us. And to me, the gift that's in us is from God. And I feel that we've been given everything we need to have an amazing life here. Yet on life's experiences, we're going to have learning to do. And we're going to experience things that may not be so much fun, but that's part of that stretch test, that heart awakening, that kick in the butt. That stuff can take us in a very different direction as far as where we thought we're headed and now for the work that we're ultimately going to wind up doing. So I think it's part of the learning. It's how we choose to learn. I think, and I've had this, humans choose to learn through drama. Sometimes you have to have something very dramatic to get the teaching and the lesson. Sometimes when it's just too calm, too smooth, too easy, it's like, this isn't exciting enough for me. I need some more action going on here. But I think it's part of the way that and we're here to learn. We're here to learn all the time, So the book that I'm working on is a book of going within and learning about our core beliefs, learning about what is truth to us, learning how our thought processes, what we eat, how we take care of ourselves, what our parents taught us, and there's a lot of Q&A, and it's a workbook journal. It is meant for you to ask those key questions, and there's key questions asked of God. And God, why does this happen, and why does that happen, and blah, blah, blah. And that's where I went back to one of the things that God said, don't form permanent attachments to anyone in life. that is something he does not seek for us in our relationships, because he doesn't want us thrown off kilter when something happens to someone, that our world is no longer meaningful and nothing's important. There are still things left for you to do. There are still things left for you to experience. There are still things yet on your journey that need to unfold.
When you say that it's a workbook journal, that means that it's more of an interactive. This is not a book that you'll just read?
No, it's a book. It's like a diary. It's going to have where you can doodle in it. There's places to scribble notes in. There's questions for you to answer. There's prayers. There's questions of all the stuff that we kind of struggle with, like, well, why would God let that happen? And how come that happened? And why isn't it that kind of stuff?
Very, very different.
Very different. And I'm really looking forward to launching it this spring. And I think people will so benefit and shift into a whole new space by going through this journal. And it's we have to do the work. There's work that we have to do. Yes, there's miraculous healings. Yes, there's things that happen that we cannot explain. But we need to be willing to go within. We need to be willing to reflect. We need to take a look at our actions, our choices, what we're doing, how we're living, how we're learning, how are we with relationships? What are we doing in the relationships that we have?
How did you ever decide to do a book that would be, like, I would think it's interactive. It's not something that you just read like a story. And how did you come up with this idea?
God gave me the whole book, and it was just a book of information, divinely inspired, and I think it needs to be interactive. We can't just be talked at. We need to be put through exercises. We have to have tools. We have to have techniques. We need a little help along the way. At least I know I did. I'm speaking for myself, and I think there's a lot of people out there that they want to change, but they are kind of a little stuck, and they want to know, like, well, what are some things I could do to help move this along? So I really believe in doing the work. You have to do the work.
So this sounds wonderful. It could be something that anyone reading it, working with it, could do at their own time.
Exactly.
If it were like a group meeting, it might not be the time, or you might not be comfortable.
Exactly.
It would be a time when you really could take yourself within.
Exactly.
When you're not busy with your daily work and whatever else is going on.
Exactly.
Do you have any idea when that will actually be published, or just about a date?
No later than summer, but somewhere definitely in spring. I'm just winding down the final editing and the layout, and I'm very excited to get it out there. And I've been told it's going to be a really big book, so we'll see.
And we were talking about different kinds of losses here. And how do you grow closer to someone, even though they seem to have disappeared?
Okay. So you have somebody in your life, and you used to see them on a regular basis, and all of a sudden they just kind of like disappear on you.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times what we can do is just set that intention and pray about it, and see that you two will be reunited when the time is right. Very often when there's a disconnect and a connect and a disconnect, because we're lined up in different directions to do different things. So don't harbor animosity or ill will. Just, you could just say, I love this person, I miss this person, and I am welcoming this person back when they're ready. And look forward to that person coming back. But in the meantime, just go about doing what you're doing, setting the intention that, that they will return when the timing is right. Because often we need to be lined up like in synchronistic times, like, this is my time to finally connect with them. And then just trust in the comings and goings of people in our life. Like, are they there for a season? Are they there for a minute? Are they there for, are they lifetime partners for us? We have a way of discerning and working that out. But just to stay optimistic that it's perfect as it is.
I think it's probably about 4 years ago or so that I first met you, and very casually didn't think much of it.
Exactly.
Not friends or anything. And it was interesting that you dialed my number by accident.
Exactly.
And I had seen it on my caller ID, and then Barb Kydell was looking for someone on her show.
Exactly.
And I said, you ought to call Cindy Miller. And she said, who is she? And I said, she just called today, and I didn't, I called her back, and she said she called my number by mistake.
Exactly.
And I said you should call her, and that's how you wound up coming on her show.
Exactly.
You didn't know that I was involved
No idea.
in any of this, and
No idea.
It wound up that you've been on several shows at this point.
And we've come in and out of each other's lives, and there might be a time where there was a disconnect and then a reconnect and a disconnect. So obviously I feel, to me, I go, bring it back to God, that God has lined us up, like this is the perfect time for us to come together and start talking some of these topics that we're talking and bringing out there for people, that it's ready to happen now. So there was no accident in that accidental phone call. So as you say, it's the time astrologically of this stuff to come out on the air, more about spirituality, and the topics we talk about are all of the spiritual nature.
Yes, and you're not into the astrological part of it, and it's just interesting, the synchronicity,
Yeah.
as you say.
Synchronistic.
And which appears as an accident.
Right.
It seems like, well, accidentally this happens.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, coincidentally this
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Do you want to, we have about 2 minutes left. Do you want to say anything about what seems like just, oh, it's just coincidence?
Oh, things that are, I say it's so synchronistic, our lives, in that if we could remember that it's more than just a coincidence, I think we can feel a little calmer and a little less worried and trust. And we can say to God, you know, God, I don't like this game plan right now. I ain't failing this, but trust that you got the best plan and you know what you're doing, so I'm going to rely on you to work this all out. And I think when we think of that, like, okay, you're going to line me up when I need to be lined up and put me with who I'm going to be put with, and this is going to happen, we are much calmer. So I think if we just trust in synchronicity in life, that we get maneuvered to where we need to be and to follow our impulse.
And we have 1 minute left, and I was just speaking to someone on Sunday about soulmates, that they are not that some people think, oh, that's my true love. A soulmate is anybody you've had, you know, connections with previously, and that you have to trust your gut instincts too.
Yeah.
That if you feel someone really is not good for you, you really do need to remove yourself.
Yeah.
That not anyone that comes along our way is meant to be there all the time.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, you can say that you trust in God, but we were also given a brain and emotions that we have to use.
Right.
The show has now come to a close, and I'm very happy that we've been able to have you on again. Look forward to having you on with your poetry, perhaps with Amy Nowicki.
That would be awesome.
Have a dual show
Yeah.
with both of you. And thank you very much.
Thank you,
for
Sandy.
listening. And if you want to contact us, practicaltalktime@yahoo.com. Thank you for viewing.